Construction at the new office is wrapping up, but I have a new problem. And it's definitely a first world problem, but still. I come into the office and it's kind of pitch black right now. I have to come over all the way across this room and turn on the light switch. Like I said, it's a first world problem, but I want to have some way for when I open the outside door, the lights come on. Now, we have light switches, and I actually bought these Leviton Zigbee switches. I have one here, I have one in the server room, I have one in the studio, and two up front. My principle with home automation is it has to be additive. If you want to have a smart home, it should actually be smart. It shouldn't be stupid. It's really stupid when you put in a device that requires an internet connection or it requires a hub just to get your lights to come on. So this switch, there's no internet connection right now, there's no hub, there's nothing like that. The switch turns off and turns on. It's actually a light switch. And I have this Home Assistant yellow that I bought. None of the things in this video are sponsored, everything I purchased, and I'm going to be setting it all up today. The new studio also has a light switch, and you can hear there's a lot of echo in here, so I'm gonna pop out of this room. But since it's the month of October, I actually want to raise funds again for the UOAA. Last year we raised over $10,000. It was amazing. I have an ostomy. There are millions of people in the world that have ostomies, and it saved my life, and a lot of people have a stigma associated with it. So the UOAA does great work to advocate for people with ostomies, basically help people to realize you can have a full life with an ostomy. It's not the end of your life, it's the start of a new life. There's a button up in the top corner, and if you feel it in your heart that you could donate and help other people with ostomies like me, who might not have the same opportunities that I do, please click that button and donate. Anyway, on to the office. You might notice there's these little blue pieces of tape around in the office. Those are marking spots on the wall that I'll need to touch up at some point. I have everything painted except for this wall. I'll get to that wall soon at some point, maybe. But behind me there are all the ceiling tiles, and these ceiling tiles are interesting. They're basically like insulation material on the top, and then they're slightly flexible, so they're easier to get in than the more rigid ceiling tiles that were in this place when I moved in. Let's see what else. We have new carpet in the studio space. And the carpet does help a little bit. There's only like 1.5 seconds of echo instead of 3 seconds now. But when the ceiling tiles are in, that'll help also. You might notice also there's only one light fixture right now that's on. That's because the electrician couldn't find the new light fixtures, which are down here. So I put those out for him, and wow, the white balance in here is great with that gray wall. Now I'm thinking I should have put gray everywhere. And then back here, I have the doors painted and trim painted. I thought I was done painting, but still got the doors. Most of the doors are working great. But when you paint, it adds like 1 millimeter to the door. The problem that creates is over here. Do you hear that sound? The door is basically not hitting perfectly, and now this little latch only goes in if you kind of maneuver the door perfectly. So that's where we are with the office. HVAC is coming, sprinklers are coming, the electrician's coming back. But today I'm going to set up Home Assistant. We're going to automate these lights. And then Home Assistant is going to be the basis for a lot of other things too. I got a Z-Wave radio that I'm going to use to control the HVAC system. I am going to set up air gradient. I actually just posted a video on Gearling Engineering. There's a link to that below. My dad is using them at his office, and now I'm going to put them in at my office too to measure CO2 and PM2.5 and things like that. But let's get right to it. We got the Home Assistant yellow in a box. The great thing about the Home Assistant yellow is it's basically an all-in-one package. You add on a Raspberry Pi Compute Module 4. So I bought the CM4. I think this is an eMMC module with 4 gigs of RAM. So it has an 8 gig eMMC and 4 gigs of RAM. I'm actually going to boot it off of an NVMe drive that I have instead though. So one of the cool things about the Home Assistant Yellow is that it uses the PCI Express on the Raspberry Pi to let you boot off of an NVMe drive, which is more reliable and faster. Let's get this Home Assistant out. And it has a setup guide. So we'll use that, we'll go online and find out how to set this up. It's not too hard. And here's the box itself. So that's Home Assistant yellow. It has a nice frosted top. I'll let you watch the peel because it's nice. The PoE version has a little power adapter inside that lets it get power through this Ethernet port. So all I'll need is one plug going into the back of this, which is nice, instead of having a power plug and Ethernet. I don't currently have a PoE switch here that provides power, so I'm using this little PoE adapter that you plug into the wall, and then you plug one side into your network and one side into here, and it'll give PoE and network to this device. Let's check out what else comes inside. There is a heatsink for the Compute Module 4, and some screws and thermal pads, and a network adapter cable. And another thing that you'll need, you don't absolutely have to do it this way, but this is the recommended way, is a USB stick that you can put Home Assistant OS on. And you'll plug it into here and then press a button when you start it up, and it'll write the OS to the NVMe drive all internally. It's kind of magic. And there's a warranty and safety guide. We don't need that. Well, I mean, it's nice to be safe, but another thing that I bought today is an Aqara motion sensor. This is Zigbee, so it works with the built-in Zigbee wireless radio inside of this thing. And what I'll do is I'll set this up in this room so that when I come in the door, this senses my motion and turns on the lights. Now there's other ways to do this, and I'm going to go into that in the future at some point. I actually have on the way an Everything Smart Home EP1, I think it's called, and it's a human presence detector. So the problem with motion detectors is if I sit like this, the motion detector is not going to catch my movement. Even if I'm moving just a little bit, it's not going to catch that movement. A human presence detector uses either 2.4 gigahertz, or there are some that do like 24 gigahertz. So basically tiny radio waves that it sends out and it reflects. It basically uses radar to detect humans. I'm going to try to use one of those eventually, but they take a little bit longer to ship. So for now, we're just doing motion sensing. So we have all the items together, and we need to open the case. So I'll go ahead and do that. I like that they're thumb screws. It's all, I don't need a tool. Okay. That's easy enough. Now another thing I forgot to mention is I also have this, it's an 800 LR Z-Wave GPIO module. If you want to add on, this comes with a built-in Zigbee radio right here. That's a Zigbee radio, right there. And that works with anything Zigbee and I believe also Matter. But Z-Wave, there's a lot of devices out there that are Z-Wave, and you can add this in and it should work out of the box with Home Assistant. Yeah, it looks like this goes on here. So that's going to cover up my NVMe slot. So I'll install this second. Do you see it? There it is. Yep. Well, it says install the CM4 first, but I'm going to do the NVMe first because I know better. I hope the kit comes with a screw. So there's 2 thermal pads and 2 little springy standoff retention clips, and then 4 screws. So on the bottom I have to remove this screw. It comes with a screwdriver. How nice is that? So I need to remove this screw, and then I take this little nut and I put it in the slot of the M.2, and then I screw the screw back into this. So that's a little interesting. It'd be nice if they had a completely toolless design for that. I'm going to put this plastic tray back out. And let's work on the Compute Module 4 now. Then I just pick it up and pop it in like that. And this comes with screws. I'll go ahead and use these screws because I'm going to have this thing in service for hopefully years. And why not also screw it down if you can? Okay, got 4 screws in place. You can see that. So it wants me to put this over the RAM chip and this over the CPU. So I'll go ahead and do that. Oh, these things are made for people with smaller hands. The RAM chip on the CM4 doesn't get that hot, but I guess if it's in an enclosed space, it's nice to have the heat going through that heatsink instead of just dumping into the Pi itself. And then it wants us to push in these pins. Okay, line it up. There you go. Okay, so the heatsink is installed. Now we have everything except for this Z-Wave module. So I'm going to put this on. Okay, so now we have Z-Wave and Zigbee up here in the corner. The Zigbee radio is hiding out right on the bottom. And we got NVMe Compute Module 4 with the heatsink, and now we're ready to put this thing back together. Shimmy this up. because these buttons stick out a bit. So if you don't get this side first, you could break those buttons. So make sure you get that side in first. I already flashed the Home Assistant OS installer to this flash drive, and it says to plug it into one of the USB ports. I'll do the top one because that's the one in the picture. No other reason than that. And then connect an Ethernet cable with PoE and wait for it to boot. So it says that that's all I need to do. Now I just need to get this plugged into power and network. Okay. We have my network switch plugged into the LAN port, and PoE output on this little thing goes to Home Assistant. So when I plug it in, Home Assistant should turn on and start booting. There's power. And we have lights on here, so that's good. It says connect the power supply. Wait for Home Assistant to do that. The yellow LED should be blinking steadily. Okay, yellow LED is blinking steadily. Still blinking. Once the installer is ready, the LED will be constantly on for 5 seconds. So we'll see. Okay, the yellow LED is blinking fast now, so that's good. Get my face out of there so it can focus. And once it's finished, only the red LED will stay on. I'm going to pause here, and when it finishes, oh, hey, look at that. Ta-da! The green LED's off, red LED's on, and now it says to disconnect everything. So take out power, which is through the Ethernet cable, take out the USB, and reconnect Ethernet. Now it says you can either install the app, or if your network is a normal network, you can visit homeassistant.local port 8123. So that's what I'm going to try to do. Homeassistant.local 8123, I think. Yep, there it is. So it's preparing Home Assistant, which can take up to 20 minutes. So let's see what it's doing right now. We'll wait for that to finish. It finished whatever initial setup it did. Now if I had an existing Home Assistant setup, I could restore the backup of it here, which is nice. One of the things I like about Home Assistant is you can easily back up your configuration, and then if you need to change it or upgrade to a new device or something, you can do that pretty easy. It's a lot easier than other systems which require cloud accounts, and you can't save backups locally. Anyway. But yeah, I want to create my smart home, except in this case it's a smart office. Create a user account. I'm not going to show you what my password is, I'm sorry. Next. Hey, they found something for Zigbee. It says rainy. It is rainy today, so that's nice. It doesn't, I mentioned this when I set this up at my home a year or two ago. I don't remember exactly when that was, but the new user experience is like, okay, what do I do now? Like, there's nothing. I guess you could hit this little thing and you edit the dashboard, but there's a logbook and stuff. But how do I want to add a device? So how do I do that? You know, there should be a button somewhere. Maybe there is, and I'm just completely missing it. But I don't see any buttons anywhere. Like add devices. I want to add these light switches. How do I do that? You know, so maybe under settings, I think. Yeah, devices. Is that it? Zigbee. So it found this, so it automatically finds the built-in Zigbee, which is nice. You don't have to do any extra configuration for that. And I want to add devices. So now, at this point, I need to set my switches into pairing mode. So let's go do that. I believe for a switch like this, you can hold down the button. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so see the little yellow light comes on. So now over here, it should show up. Maybe. We'll see. Okay, so I should have actually read the instructions. This is the server room, by the way. There's no servers yet. We're gonna get there, don't worry. But you hold the paddle for 7 seconds, and then the amber light comes on, and then you press the paddle 1 time. Okay, And now we should be able to come over here, and there we go, starting interview. Okay, device is ready to use. It found it. It's the DG15S by Leviton. We're going to call it light switch, and we'll add new area, server room, add. Now it's time to do all the rest, so let's go do that. Okay, starting another interview. I didn't know I was going to be interviewing so many devices today, but here it goes. Okay, ready to use. I'll actually just call these lights. Back room. Found another device. This is the studio light switch, the black one. In the studio, I'm going to call it Studio A, because someday there might be another studio. Who knows? Okay, so I'm going to pause here and set up the rest, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now comes the interesting part. I'm going to get this sensor out. And this is battery operated, which is cool, but it also means that it has to be in an accessible location so that I can go up and replace the batteries if I need to. But like I said, my plan is to use a human presence detector. But these are still really helpful. There's a lot of cases where a motion sensor is adequate or even preferred, especially if you have a high noise RF environment. If you have like lots of Wi-Fi networks or things, that can actually interfere with the human presence detectors. So these are really handy. They're still extremely useful, and this is one that is highly rated. I've had a bunch of Aqara stuff at my house, and I like them, so that's why I picked this one. I'm going to start searching for it, and I'm going to pull this tab like that, and I don't think that's set it into pairing mode, so I'm going to press this button. There we go. Got some blinks. Maybe I didn't do it right. Let's read the manual. It's not very verbose on how you're supposed to actually do this. I'm already in the Chinese section here. Let's see. Let's press this button again and see what happens. Alright, so I have no idea why that was so difficult. You just hold down the button for 3 seconds, but I had to basically go out of the dashboard in Home Assistant and come back in. Maybe there's some browser error, I don't know, but now it's paired and ready to use. So I'm going to set this as the backroom motion sensor. When I get the other detectors, I'm hoping to get some hardwired options. That way I will never have to change batteries in it. There's luminance. Oh wow, it measures light levels. I didn't realize this has a light level measurement. That's kind of cool. So you can see there's 8 lux, and if I open it up, goes to 297. So that's kind of cool. I didn't know this had a light level sensor built in it. I mean, it's probably not calibrated to be super accurate, but that's cool to have, because now I can see if the lights are actually on and trigger things based on that. First I'm going to set up an automation. I'm going to create an automation for it, and I believe I can go into settings, automations, and create automation. And I'm going to do a motion activated light, and we're going to use the motion sensor, and we're going to choose an area. We're going to do the back room and leave the light on for 120 seconds would be 2 minutes. Let's do 5 minutes. Save that, and we'll call this back room lights. Save. Okay, motion sensor motion detects motion. So let's see. Oh wow, it's already creating a dashboard for me. So I guess that's the nice thing about this. It will create its own little dashboard for you. Okay, so we have our cute little motion sensor. Stop focusing on me. There you go. Look at that cute little guy. You know how they say measure twice, cut once or something? I stuck it on there in the completely wrong orientation. I wanted to have it pointed down towards this door area and be able to pick up some of the room out here, but that didn't work out because I stuck it the wrong way, and you can't really unstick it, so it's like that now. Okay, so now that we got all the lights in here, the cool thing is from Home Assistant, and you can do a mobile app for this too, I can turn on and off all the lights in the building just like this. So you can see the studio. If I click the button, light comes on. See that? And it's very responsive. So here's the server room right behind me. I click and it's on. And if I go back here, like I said, smart things should be additive, so I still have a light switch and I can turn it off right here. That's great. It's ridiculous when people put in smart things and they take out a switch and all of a sudden you can't turn it off your light hardwired. That's crazy. I just don't understand that. Now I'm going to test the motion sensor. So what I'm going to do is turn off the lights everywhere in the building. Now you can see it's quite dark in here, and I'll walk back in a minute and see if the lights come back on. This is so echoey, sorry about that, but I pulled up the mobile app and put in my credentials, and you can see, if I can focus, that the motion is clear. So let's walk back here. And see if the motion sensor picks me up. Now I will have a little more touch-up paint to do at some point, although the state of this door frame is not the best, so I don't think I'll worry about that for now. The problem is those sensors have to be oriented correctly, and I had it basically upside down, so it was looking at the ceiling instead of at the ground level for motion. So I set it on top of the electrical box for now until I get the human presence sensor set up, and it works great there. I have Home Assistant working. The one last thing I wanted to try was that Z-Wave integration, because the thermostat for this place actually has Z-Wave built in, so I'm going to see if I can get that working with Home Assistant. I also want to see if I can get my SimpliSafe thing working, so I'm going to try doing this. So I have SimpliSafe set up, but as you can see here, it depends on the cloud, so this is not truly smart. However, when you're talking about a security system, you want it to talk to the cloud. It has to talk to the people who can call the police if you're not around. So it's a necessary evil in this case. So it's disarmed, and let's see if this actually works. I'm going to save the dashboard. Okay, I'm going to try arming home.
SimpliSafe on.
Home. It all worked. Good job. Way to go, Home Assistant. So I'll disarm.
Alarm off.
Well, that's just brilliant. So now for SimpliSafe, I can use, it's hard to see this when you're holding the camera, this little control panel. I can use my keychain, or I can even use Home Assistant to arm and disarm the system. And yeah, that's really cool that there's an integration for that in Home Assistant. How many other home hubs are you going to buy that's like, oh yeah, put in SimpliSafe, put in ADT, or whatever your security system is, because the community maintains these integrations. One thing I forgot to do is, if I go to storage configuration, which is in storage system, storage, it's using the eMMC right now. In order to use the NVMe, I need to move to data disk. So I'm going to try doing that. Move data disk, NVMe, move. Okay, so Home Assistant restarted. And look at that, use space 0.4%. It looks like it's now using the correct data disk. How to install on the yellow. Let's see if it has it here. Settings, devices, we'll add integration. Is Z-Wave? Z-Wave, okay. Install the JS supervisor, generate security keys, submit. Let's see what it does. This may take some seconds. I don't know how many some is, but hopefully it's like 4. And now we should have Z-Wave somewhere here. It is Z-Wave. Okay, Z-Wave, one device. How do we add a device here? One device. Okay, so how do we add, oh, here we go. Add device. So the instructions here are a little bit complex. I'm going to take this up to the front and try getting this thing into its pairing mode. Okay, so this is in inclusion mode or whatever that is. And over here it says press fan and hold until options come up. Press the up button until Z-Wave is shown. Select, remove. Okay, so it must have been on a Z-Wave network. So I'm going to remove it first. Well, that's annoying. It said done and failed. Done, failed. Done, failed. You done failed, little device. It says that I can remove it here, but yeah, it keeps just doing failed. That's annoying. Okay, so we're to the point where I'm going to factory reset this thing because apparently this is like in HVAC land, they're like, oh, this is so dangerous for users to be able to modify these things, so they don't actually include a lot of support. But I'm going to factory reset it, and hopefully I can get it enrolled in Z-Wave. We'll see. There we go. Now it's going to let me install. Okay, searching for devices. And I'll hit select on here. Now it says wait. And look at that. Being interviewed. Device has been added. TBZ48. And it's a thermostat. I just had to reset this using instructions that are not available on the internet, except for through YouTube, so thank you to other YouTubers who post these kind of things. To reset it, I pulled it off the wall, took the batteries out, and the batteries were actually dead. So when I put it back on the wall, I was holding these two buttons down, and then a little reset thing pops up, and it resets to factory defaults. Okay, I've spent some time working on the dashboard here, and I have it set up pretty much to my liking. I'm going to walk back into the back and see if the motion sensor picks me up this time, and it should turn on the back lights here. There it is, look at that. So the motion sensor, which I stuck up here because the sticky pad on it is broken and I don't have another one, it worked and the light came on, and that's pretty awesome. So including all of the time I spent reworking everything because I was silly and fixing up the thermostat, which was paired to another Z-Wave thing, and having to research all that, in about 3 hours, I got all the basic automations done in this space. And I'm excited because now that I have Home Assistant running, I'm going to be able to add some more automations. Like one of the things that I would like to be able to do here, so that I couldn't do it in my home office that easily, is set up a studio space like this to have one button where I press the button, it turns off the house lights, turns on the studio lights, and gets everything set up for recording. Maybe turns on my camera, turns on the little box that I use to do the recording, start and stop it, all that stuff. So all I have to do if I'm going to record a video is come in, hit a button, boom, I'm ready. The reason I love the Home Assistant yellow, and there's a new Home Assistant green, I'll link to both below in the description. It's open source, it's community driven, it's not run by one big vendor. I mean, there's Nabu Casa, but it's a community project really. It's been around for years now, it's going to be around for years. All these other systems, like I bought Philips Hue for my house, and because I bought Philips Hue, now it's like you need to create a Philips account to be able to keep using this. That's ridiculous. I think that's so dumb. I want to buy my light bulbs, and 100 years from now, if the light bulb still works, I don't want to have a cloud account because I don't think Philips is going to be around in 100 years. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But that's the great thing about this is it works with everything. So if I upgrade to a different security system, I can still use all my rest of my automation. I don't have to have it all from one crazy vendor. I think that's just ridiculous. So for me, it has to be local, it has to be private, and it has to work even if the internet's down, even if my local network's down. I want all the essentials to work. The HVAC is still going to work whether or not Home Assistant is running. These light switches still work whether or not Home Assistant is running. That's the level of automation that I like. I think that's actually smart because it's secure, it's private, it's local, and it works the same way whether or not all the smart stuff is running. So by the next video, you should be able to see the studio lights will be in, the HVAC will be in, hopefully the ceiling grid above me and in the studio will be in, and I don't know whether or not I'll have a rack in here yet. I might have something temporary set up, but I want to get all the cables that are in the ceiling up there run down into this space so that I can start plugging things in. At least some of the networking, we'll get there. And as always, if you've seen anything in this video where it's like, man, I would do this different, or I would do this better, please give me suggestions. Another thing that I'm looking at is what kind of desks to put into the studio. This wall in the back will have, it has some outlets at desk height. My plan is, I originally was going to try to get one long workbench along that whole wall, but now I'm thinking I might do 3 workstations. So like a workstation bench and a workstation bench. That way I can do it modular. I want to have pegboards, I want to have bins for organization, all that kind of stuff. And I have some of that at home, but this is a clean slate. What would you think I should do here? Let me know in the comments, and until next time, I'm Jeff Geerling. That's some fun B-roll there.